episodes of Bubblegum. Hi guys, and welcome to excellent episodes of Bubblegum. I'm your host Bubblegum, and today I will be interviewing Dean Friederich. Hi Dean.
Hello, how are you? I'm so happy to be here.
I'm good, and you? Is it fine if I ask you some questions?
Go ahead, I'm an open book. Hoy Milies.
Okay. What inspired you to choose your career?
To be 100% honest with you, my whole career in radio actually started completely by accident. It's the weirdest thing ever because I went to drama school after I finished high school. My whole plan of action, I was like, I'm going to go be an actor and all this kind of stuff. And I wanted to do TV and film and theater and what have you. And I got involved in radio for the first time in 2012. One of my sisters was actually telling me about an open call audition that a radio station here in Cape Town was doing at the time. I went, I did the audition. I fluffed so bad. I was mispronouncing things. I was stumbling over my words, all that kind of stuff. And I thought to myself, there's no chance that these people are going to phone me back. But at the same time, I didn't really care because initially I was just there at the audition for funsies. And they phoned me, I think it was about a week later, and they offered me a training slot. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll give this a go. And the very first time I ever went on air, on live radio, I was like, OMG times 3, this is the best feeling ever. This is so much fun. And I was kind of hooked from there. So it wasn't something that I ever initially planned on. But once I got involved in the industry, I was hooked and I fell in love and I never left.
Wow, okay. How do you put together your show content?
Well, in terms of the music specifically, I don't know, this might be a little bit of a myth that'll be busted for some people because I know a lot of people sometimes think that for me specifically as a radio presenter and for the radio station that I work for specifically, us as presenters, we don't actually put together our own playlists. We don't put together our music. It's all done by a team at the station because, of course, we have to play certain amounts of local music, certain amounts of international music. Of that local music, some of it needs to be English, some of it needs to be Afrikaans, all sort of in accordance with our broadcasting license. So we have to be very careful about what music we play. So we actually have a team that does the music themselves every single day. But in terms of the content, pretty much if I look at how my show on air works right now, I had a meeting with our program manager and we sort of sat down and discussed what sort of things I like to follow on social media, what sort of things I enjoy talking about, what I like to read on the internet and what have you, and accounts that I follow on Instagram and stuff like that, and sort of based it upon that so that when I'm doing shows, when I'm doing links and what have you, I'm talking about things that I relate to as the person talking about it. Because I feel like if you're going to talk about something on air and you don't really know what you're talking about or you don't really have much interest in that kind of stuff, it's going to show. So for me, I have a lot of the content is stuff that I like to see on the internet. So celeb news, weird news. We talk about memes, like funny memes on the internet and all that sort of stuff. And I thoroughly enjoy it. I think it comes across when you as the presenter enjoy the kind of content that you're talking about.
How do you keep your listeners tuned into your show?
Well, I suppose that's quite an open-ended question, how I keep my listeners tuned in. I think for me specifically, I try to be as interesting as I am interested in what I'm talking about. Because I feel like if I'm someone listening to the radio on the other side, if I can hear that a presenter is sort of not really all that kind of phased or into whatever it is that they're talking about, I feel like I can hear that. And then I'm not really all that interested in what they have to say because they don't seem all that interested in what they have to say. So I think it's a bit of a push and pull situation. Like if you want people to be interested in what you're talking about in between your music, you kind of need to be interested in what you're talking about as well.
Okay. Is it tough to work in this industry?
Yes and no. There is obviously a lot of fun elements to working in radio and working in broadcasting, specifically within South Africa. There are a lot of fun elements to it in terms of, you know, the kind of place that you get to call your workplace and the kind of things that you get to do and people that you get to meet and all that kind of stuff. That is, of course, a lot of fun. But there is definitely a hustle behind our industry that I think a lot of people don't see or hear, which is not a bad thing. I mean, there's things that happen behind the scenes all the time that people don't always see or hear. But like, for example, just something simple like getting your foot in the door or getting your start in the industry. It's very, very difficult because if you take South African broadcasting, let's say commercial radio, right? Like all the big radio stations in all the cities, all the big radio stations in Cape Town, Durban, Joburg, Bloem, all those kinds of places. It's not all those many places. And you have so many people that try so hard to get into an industry that is quite small, really. It's actually a very small industry. So you have to work very, very hard. And you kind of have to make sure that you stand out in some kind of way against someone else. It sounds very competitive, but I suppose it is competitive to a certain extent when you're trying to get into this kind of industry. And I don't think it's always necessarily about doing something different, because sometimes you don't have to come up with a new idea. You can take an existing idea, but find a way to do it better. So it can be difficult, but it can also be a lot of fun a lot of the time as well.
What advice would you give to all young people out there who would take into consideration to become a radio presenter?
I would say be prepared to work very hard, because yes, it is a lot of fun and you thoroughly enjoy yourself 95% of the time. But as with any industry or any field that you work in, some days are better than others. Some days are going to be very challenging, specifically when trying to get into this kind of industry, because it is so small. It's quite hard. I mean, I can remember there was a period of time where I did leave the industry for a little bit, and to get my foot back into the door again, even after I'd already, established a little bit of a network for myself, it was very, very difficult. So you constantly have to be sort of, how can I say, at the top of your game, be present, work hard, show up, be part of the team, all that kind of stuff, because there are thousands of people out there who would kill to have the position that you have. And kill sounds very violent, but you know what I mean. There are a lot of people out there who would really, really, really love to be in your shoes. And I don't think people should ever take that for granted, because of how much of a challenge it can be just to get your foot into the door.
Thank you guys for tuning into my podcast, and thank you, Dean Friederich, for tuning in and for answering my questions.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Okay, thank you. Bye, Dean.
Bye.
I hope you guys enjoyed my podcast, and if you did, please smash that like button down below, and I will see all of you next time. Goodbye. Excellent episodes with Bubblegum.